Welcome to the Purposeful MD Podcast. As a physician, you've sacrificed so much of your life for other people, your patients, your family, your friends, and your colleagues. What would it feel like to spend time doing what you enjoy and to live without guilt? I'm your host, Dr. Laura Sutton, a family physician, certified coach, and business owner. If you're a medical professional on a journey towards your most purposeful life, a life with more time and energy, and ultimately more joy, then this is the podcast for you. Welcome to the Purposeful MD Podcast. I'm really excited to have our guest today, Gregory Proctor, on. We'll get to know him. But let me read your bio. So Gregory Proctor is a Navy veteran, cancer survivor, and global project executive, and the award-winning author of Faith, Strength, and Courage, a memoir of overcoming adversity and embracing life's journey. With over 27 years of experience in project management, consulting, and leadership across energy, infrastructure, and technology sectors, Gregory is co-founder and host of the Cut to the Chase podcast. His storytelling is rooted in lived experience, surviving multiple myeloma, rebuilding a broken life, and transforming hardship into a platform of healing and purpose. I love that. Gregory is also the founder of Shexer LLC. Did I pronounce that right?
Sketcher.
Sketcher. Thank you. Sketcher. He now devotes his platform to empowering others, particularly veterans, patients, and underrepresented voices, to reclaim their lives after trauma. A passionate traveler, he now helps fund pilgrimage journeys for cancer survivors on the Camino de Santiago. Welcome to the podcast, Gregory.
Thank you, Laura, for having me. Glad to be here, old friend.
Yeah. So you and I have met several different times. We met through some fundraising work that we do for cancer research and advocacy. I don't know if you know this, but you light up every room that you go into. I don't know if anybody's ever told you that. Hopefully somebody has, but the energy shifts when you walk into a room, and it's just always such a joy to see you and to share space with you. So thank you for being you, and thanks for being here.
Well, definitely thank you for having me. And obviously, thank you for the compliment. I don't think I've heard that before.
Well, it's very true, and you can ask other people that know you, and I'm sure they will concur. So just tell us about you, about your journey, about how you got to be where you are right now.
Well, I would have to start this by saying where I am today and where I was, should I say, before cancer, pre-cancer. I feel like, for lack of better terms, I'm two different individuals. Before cancer, I was an individual that was very passionate, very driven, always focused on the overall goal, the success, the deadline of the projects. And I guess I came off a little bit harsh, somewhat brash back then during, I would say the first 50 years of my life. And post cancer, things have taken rather of a dynamic shift. I've become a little bit more humble, compassionate, very giving and caring and sympathetic and also empathetic with regards to what people deal with in their lives. I think the kindness and the overall accentuation of going through what I went through and realizing that I had to, rely on community. I had to rely on friends. I had to rely on my faith and things that, unbeknownst to where I was prior to cancer, I knew about those things. I embraced those things, but I wasn't as checked into those things as probably as I should have been. And now, post cancer, I would have to say that I am more embodied with life, purpose, and the overall authentication of being able to, you know, uplift others and have a compassion for dealing with things that, are tough, they are challenging in our lives, but being able to provide them with a sense of it's not the end, or being able to provide them with a sense of they're not alone, and being able to provide them with a sense of inspiration to let them know that there's an opportunity that even though things could have been more traumatic in their lives, it gives them an opportunity to understand, to see the other side, and give them purposeful means to be able to weather the storm and to be able to help them resonate with being able to help others.
Thank you for sharing all that. And it's so beautiful the way you describe it. Just this really clear contrast between who you were before your cancer diagnosis and where you are now.
Mhm.
Tell us as much as or as little as you'd like to share about your diagnosis and what life was like for you around that time.
Well, life for me during the diagnosis was, I would have to say, very exciting. I mean, sitting on the cusp of what I consider to be a very invigorating life. We were going through a capital raise with Joe Montana. Everybody knows Joe Montana, NFL quarterback, an old high school friend of mine. We had developed virtual seating technology, which was, buzzing around, not only social media and other platforms, because we're in the height of COVID at that point in time. So those that wanted to get out and see concerts and participate in other various live events, they didn't really have a way of being able to do that. And so we had gone off and started to develop this technology, and it was really getting a lot of momentum at the time. And I felt at that point in my life, with a very successful podcast, going through a capital raise with Joe Montana, my businesses were fairly good at the time because we just shifted from in person to basically kind of working online. Things were looking on a very upward trajectory in my life, and I was really, really excited. Of course, I wasn't paying a lot of attention to my health. I was dealing with lower back pains and other ailments that were starting to kind of rear their ugly head at the moment. And I was kind of trying to blow those things off as I was tied into the buzz and the excitement of all of the possibility that was going on in my life. And then, unbeknownst to me, when things actually took a real turn for the worse, is when I woke up one morning and I couldn't get out of bed. I was pretty much immobile and didn't really know what was going on at that point in time, and literally spent probably like the next 2.5, maybe 3 weeks trying to get officially diagnosed with multiple myeloma.
Gosh. Yeah. Wow. And I mean, I didn't know you at that point, but I think just hearing that from you and just that you said you were so busy that you were kind of ignoring these health symptoms and just got to a point where you couldn't
Mhm.
ignore it anymore. Um, I tell us about, was that like a did everything have to come to a stop at that point? Were you trying to still power through with the diagnosis and the treatment and keep all these plates spinning?
Well, Laura, I think, at the time I was trying to keep all the plates spinning. My podcast, to kind of give you an idea, I had just interviewed two ladies. One lady, her mom had multiple myeloma and she passed away, which that was a very touching episode that I had recorded at that moment in time. And then later on, I recorded another episode with the lady. Her and her husband were diagnosed with two blood cancers at the time. So I didn't really factor in that that would be something that would happen to me. And, when it all started to kind of trickle in, a little bit of information as you go through different tests and variations of things, it was heart-wrenching to really understand that, this could be a part of my life. I hadn't really accepted the notion of the diagnosis until I went through my first bone marrow biopsy, and at that point, there was no turning back. I mean, this is what you have. These are the things that we have to deal with going forward. And I think at that pretentious point in my life, I had to make a conscious choice because there was no longer the Greg that could power through and do all the things that I was doing, prior to. I had to go through what I consider to be a little bit of a depression stage in my life. Very pragmatic in the overall understanding of trying to decipher, what do I let go, what do I keep. And I think that's a rationale that when you impose that question in someone's life, they will probably go, "Well, I would just keep this and move forward with that." But it's really not that easy, to make that type of decision in your life because, number one, when you talk about the admiration of your life, there is nothing more precious, nothing more quintessential than you being able to live and breathe and walk and see and touch and feel, the things that you would normally go through in your day-to-day life. And when that is stripped away from you, for me, nothing else mattered. It didn't matter if we were going to raise the capital that we needed. It didn't matter if the podcast, fell through the cracks. It didn't matter, if we had, things that, we couldn't afford. None of that mattered because the only thing that I needed to focus on at that point in my life was living
Yeah.
and trying to get back to the best quality of life that I could enjoy on this side of cancer. And I knew I had to weather a storm that unfortunately was a lot of uncertainty, a lot of adversity and challenges, a lot of pain and things that I had never expected or experienced ever in my life. I mean, a guy that didn't typically go to the doctor except for routine checkups or maybe a sinus infection here, go to the dentist here, for those routine checkups. But overall, I've lived a very healthy life up until that point. And so, psychologically and mentally, for someone that, like I said before, was kind of always in control, here's something that I couldn't control. Here's something that I truly had to rely on others. I truly had to rely on doctors and community, my pastors, my faith. I mean, these were things that were very uncomfortable. And, the destiny of you trying to be successful in anything that you want to do is you have to feel a little bit uncomfortable. And for me, it was very uncomfortable in the beginning because, as I said before, I hadn't accept, the overall aspect of the diagnosis. And so when I chose to succumb to the disease, but not let the disease control my life, but succumb to the fact that this is my routine. I'm going to be in the chemo chair 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, 8 hours a day. That was my job. That's what I had to deal with. And so when I finally succumbed to those things, my life took a much more positive turn. I began to allow for myself to release those emotions and that anxiety and not keep those things tremendously bottled up inside and allowed for others to kind of be transcended through my own journey because the number one thing I wanted to do was be able to help someone out there that didn't have a voice to be able to advocate for themselves.
Yeah. That's so beautiful. And what I'm hearing in your journey is almost like the stages of grief, right? And then you came
Mhm.
to this acceptance and and you described the discomfort in there. And what you said was, I knew I had to weather that. And I
Mhm.
think a lot of times, and I don't know, I don't want to speak for you and your experience, but for anybody who's going through something that's challenging or traumatic, we kind of want to get from here to there. Like, can we just skip over the hard part and get to the other side? And unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. We have to go through pain, whether that's physical, emotional pain, in order to just, yeah, to get through the next step. And so you had an awareness of that, that was necessary for you to be uncomfortable. And I love what you said about we have to get uncomfortable in order to
Mhm.
grow.
Mhm.
And that's so true. That's something that I've learned the hard way in my own personal and professional journey, is that we can't skip through that. And I think the other thing that really struck me about what you said is, you mentioned it before, relying on your community and being such a high achiever and being able to manage so many things all at once. It's not easy to ask for help. And a lot of myself as a physician, a lot of my physician colleagues, like, we're trained, you've got military background, we're trained to not ask for help. We do things on our own. It's that independence. And so to ask for help is really difficult sometimes. And you saw that that was something that was not only necessary, but also very healing for you.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. I needed to, as my mom would always tell me, understand when enough is enough. Being able to let your guard down and allow for people to come in to love you unconditionally, to lift you up spiritually, to provide you with encouragement. These were all things that, having up a shield or a wall around you, those type of things would never happen. And when I decided to really kind of do something that I think a lot of people would say, well, why did you do that? For me, I needed an outlet when I went to social media and just said, hey, I'm just going to spread this out like you would spread peanut butter out on a sandwich.
Hmm.
I want to spread this out, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. I want to put a positive spin on it, but I want to be very truthful. I want to be very authentic in the way that I'm sharing what I'm going through, whether it's traumatic or painful or bloody or grotesque. I just wanted it to be, in its most authentic form and fashion. And in doing that, I think it allowed for people to realize that, if you are going through something like this, whether it's dealing with cancer, dealing with divorce, or financial setback, or whatever toxicity may be going on in your life, you've got to find something to gravitate your mind, your spirit, and your heart into. And for me, that came down to hope, the overall understanding that, you know, I'm expecting for something good to come out of this. I don't know if it will or if it will not, but having the overall admiration of hope, just that, sure feeling of hope that something will positively happen with this provided me with the overall essence to really kind of keep going. Because yes, you've got to go through this storm. You don't know how long it's going to be. You don't know if the treatment is going to work. You don't know if your body's going to react in an adverse way with what's going on with you. So the only thing you have is hope. And so in having that hope and having that faith, which obviously the entitlement of my book, Faith, Strength, and Courage,
Hmm.
those were the mantras that I live by every single day because it wasn't about looking at a week or 2 weeks down the road. It was about this is what I have to endure today. I only want to see the end of the day, and then we'll worry about tomorrow when tomorrow gets here, and then
Hmm.
we move forward. In the overall connotation of just trying to progress through the journey, and
Yeah.
being able to move forward.
Yeah. How did you land on those tools as tools that were critical for you?
Well, it's interesting because I have been asked that question many, many times. You know, being an individual that was always motivated and driven and being certified kind of in the project management, PMBOK principles and philosophies and all of the theology that goes along with that, I just took a lot of what I did for clients and began to apply that to my life. And of course, I applied it in a very unorthodox way because I couldn't be the project manager in the project. I had to be the project, and I had to literally instill those tools into my lovely wife, Monica, to ensure that she would take on some of the overall responsibility to deal with things that I couldn't deal with because a lot of times I was very incoherent. I mean, if you think about being on chemo and immunotherapy for Monday through Friday, 5 to 8, or excuse me, 8 hours per day, you're very lethargic, throughout the week. It's very hard for you to kind of get things done, psychologically that requires critical thinking. And so therefore she took on a lot of those responsibilities and really helped out from the analytical aspect, the decision making aspect, where my focus was just trying to survive and doing what little I could do and dealing with, the insurance companies and some of those other things that she was somewhat unfamiliar with.
Yeah. Yeah. And it sounded like it was a conversation with her, communication with her
Hmm.
about, hey, these are my skill sets and this is what I do for my clients. Here's what I need you to do to help
Hmm.
me and remind me that these are the things that are going to help get me through.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, in order to do that, I mean, certainly, there's so many, stories that are out there, some good and some bad, but in having a community, it really starts with, your center core of individuals that, are there in your immediate family. And then from there, those that can, play an essential role in which there were a lot of people that played a lot of essential roles throughout my journey.
Hmm.
And I'm just, truly grateful and couldn't be more happier for them to be able to step up in my life and be able to help me weather the storm.
Yeah. You mentioned the family and some other folks. Did you have a community already? You mentioned your pastor and your faith-based or did you have to build that, or was it a little bit of both? Did you have to build the community around you?
Well, my popularity and notoriety was already kind of in play just from my podcasts and from my business of knowing people literally all over the world. The thing that was very scary was how do I communicate to the masses? And so the notion of going to social media was something that my wife and I kind of toyed with because she was like, well, I don't really want to go public with this. And I was needing to go public from a therapeutic perspective,
Mm.
because even though we were talking a lot about what was going on inside of me, mind, body, spirit, and soul, there was still just this notion of I need to kind of release this tension and all of this anxiety in a way that, I could kind of let it go. And so we made the decision. Of course, it was lopsided decision. She was no and I was yes. But when we decided to go that way, that's when I realized a lot of, who I knew, they were very concerned, the outreach, as I say, people parachuting in were coming in, by the masses. And
Mm.
like I said, that was very uplifting because, the person that I was on the business side before, obviously I was very hard charging and very, forthright and coming in a lot of projects that I was involved with. And I knew those people respected me, but I didn't know that they respected me to a level of sincerity that they did when the news came out and broke loose that I had cancer.
Yeah, it sounds like people really showed up for you in a way
Yes.
that was just special and probably healing for you
Yes.
way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And now you're doing that for others.
That's right. I mean, as they always say, you want to play it forward. And, for me, giving back and trying to disrupt the norm that's out there and help people be educated and advocate for themselves and give them the necessary tools to be able to do that so they don't feel like kind of a fish out of water as they go to their consultations or not knowing what questions to ask, or for that matter, not understanding their labs, which is very, very important in dealing with multiple myeloma is truly understanding your labs, probably four by more than what your doctors understand your labs.
Yeah. Yeah, I was gonna say you probably know more about those labs than I do as a primary care physician and so that advocacy, you used that word before. Yeah.
Mhm.
So tell us about the evolution of you kind of coming out of this the acute phase of your diagnosis and then turning this into a mechanism for you to serve others.
Well, the first thing for me was trying to understand that pain is something that we have an option to really digress in. We can always say, "Hey, war is me," I'm not of sound mind and body to be able to do some of the physical things that I used to do. And I knew that, of course, on the, you know, post side of going through the stem cell transplant and everything that I probably would not get back to 100%. Maybe I would get back to 80, maybe 90%. I knew I would lose certain aspects in my physicality, but for me it was about pain became, an opportunity for purpose. Vulnerability became the opportunity for being able to share with others and embrace those aspects of resiliency and allow for myself to become a beacon of inspiration for people. And so I wanted to take those negative aspects, those negative words that we tend to shun away from, and I wanted to be able to transcend those into something that became positive. And so the notion of that really was kind of how the book was launched when I wrote Faith, Strength, and Courage. And then from there, it just became an opportunity for me to get involved with various foundations and organizations that are out there, share my story, be able to publicly speak about things that should shift the norm and shift the dynamics of what patients really, really need. And that kind of led to the documentary that I'm working on right now, which is called Reclaiming Life, a Cancer Story of Hope.
That I can't wait to watch this documentary. How much can you tell us about it?
Well, the documentary is something that has always been, I would say it's been in the undercurrent of what patients talk about because as I mentioned just a moment ago, we go through all of this up and down, peak and valley, this very psychological roller coaster, mentally and physically. And a lot of times, once you get to the other side, you kind of shake it all off, and you know that Some still have a continuation of maintenance. Others, maybe their maintenance is stopped. But, we really want to re-engage in our lives. We want to kind of, get back into the prosperity of what we would consider to be our norm, even though our norm is slightly different. And so the conversions of the documentary was really brought about based on last year. My wife and I did the Camino de Santiago with three other multiple myeloma patients and their caregivers. And I kept saying to myself, wouldn't this be something very permissible to be able to bring multiple myeloma patients here, be able to combine nature and the ancient sacred ways of the Camino de Santiago and bring those two elements together to really talk about how nature can heal, to be able to talk about how we are getting ourselves back together through a physicality aspect and being able to do this walk and have these steps mean something significant in our lives as we go through this. And so bringing those two elements together was really something that I was very passionate about and wanted to kind of formalize a way to help this be the first notion of the protagonist, me being the protagonist, of being able to kind of say, look, reclaiming life is something that we all strive to do. How better to do this than to be able to raise donation dollars, bring multiple myeloma patients with us, and be able to help them be able to fulfill that obligation to check back into life.
Oh, check back into life. That's so beautiful. And the bringing people to the Camino, I mean, really a pilgrimage,
That's
and it's
correct.
such a physical feat.
Hmm.
And so I'm picturing people that are cancer survivors or still under in some form of treatment, maybe feeling like they don't have the physical or emotional strength to make the journey, even to make the trip, not let alone actually go on the walk. And here you are encouraging and showing people that, yes, you can do this. You've got the strength. You have more strength than you realize. And I'm going to be right there with you literally every step of the way. I just think it's so powerful.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing is, as I mentioned earlier, when your back is against the wall, what we don't realize is that each and every last one of us, regardless of, walks of life or background, we have an indomitable human will in our spirit. I
Hmm.
mean, it's been placed in all of us. It's a seed that sometimes you may know you have, sometimes you may not know that you have until something traumatic or adverse or whatever may happen in your life. It's a major setback that has to trigger that. And so last year, we had a young lady with us that her cancer came back very aggressively. And we walked about 117 kilometers last year, approximately 70 some odd miles.
Wow.
Her cancer came back approximately 90 days before the trip took place last year. She went through radiation. She went through a very aggressive treatment because she was very determined to do the walk. Now, of course, she didn't walk as fast, she didn't walk as slow. I mean, it doesn't matter. It's your own pilgrimage for you to
Right.
be able to do what you want to do. And we were so ecstatic and so proud of her because having her cancer come back, having the back pain, and all of the other tumultuous things that she had to deal with, but she was determined to be able to do that. And really, that's leading by example,
Hmm.
understanding that yes, this is a part of my life and it can come, it can go, but I'm not going to let it deter me from thriving, from living, and being the individual that I know that I want to live on this godly earth.
That's amazing. Yeah. Yeah, the will of the human spirit and the will for life in general and survival is pretty incredible.
Hmm.
And that community can play such a big role as you've seen.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
How long have you been in remission? What's your new birthday?
Currently, I am 4 years old. So I've been in remission now for about 4 years.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
great.
And I pray every day that I stay in remission and I don't have to deal with going back through this evolution a second time.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. What if you think probably some of the people listening are either going through something challenging right now or have been through something challenging and are still trying to manage their way through it? What advice would you give?
I think the first thing, as I mentioned, a couple times throughout this, is you really have to allow for yourself to succumb to this has happened. This is your way of life. This is your new life. A lot of times that's a tough pill to swallow.
Mhm.
And that's the really the first step. For me, it's like turning on a light switch. You can have the resistance, you can continue to fight it, you can continue to say no, 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 but guess what? It doesn't go away. And so the sooner you are willing to allow for that to be a part of your life and deal with the routines, deal with the treatment, deal with the appointments and all of those things, that's going to give you peace of mind. First and foremost, that's going to give you peace of mind. And then, of course, there's a lot of other recommendations that I'd like to be able to kind of share, and I'll just try to keep it very pointed and
Yeah, go
concise.
for it.
Um, the next thing is you want to understand what you have and understand, the aspects of the treatment process that you're on and getting yourself educated with whether or not the treatment is working, if it's not working, and the best way to do that is understanding your labs. And I always say, and it's one of those things. I know you're a doctor, and certainly I have so much respect for our friendship and who we are. But for me, doctors are navigators, and I always say this to people that I coach. If you don't come in geared with information to be able to effectively communicate with your doctors, and you have a very interactive consultation, then you leave there feeling unfulfilled.
Hmm.
Like, hey, maybe my doctor's not doing what I need them to do. Well, if you don't come prepared, it's very hard for your doctor to do that. And
Right.
so, I always tell people as I coach them, doctors are navigators. It's a two-way street. And number
Hmm.
one, it's your life. It's your
Yep.
life that you're dealing with. And regardless of the chemicals or whatever drugs are put into your body, you need to be able to communicate effectively as to whether it's working or not working,
Hmm.
you know? And then the last point I want to say is find your community. I mean, certainly there's a lot of multiple myeloma specialists and other doctors that help in the overall oncology and hematology aspect, but you need to have real world people that are living, breathing, and dealing and thriving with this disease each and every day that can give you those nuggets, that can give you that information, that can help you understand, things that are going on in your life. Because really what happens is you're in treatment for a period of time, but I would say greater than 75% of the time, you're dealing with this outside of medical professionals. And
Hmm.
you have to understand how to weather that without the medical professionals being right there, in tow to be able to help you, survive on a day by day basis. And I think those three things are, very, very important. The acceptance, understanding how to get yourself educated, and then, of course, finding your community. Because at the end of the day, you're not alone. There is a lot of information that's out there. It's very, very difficult to navigate if you try to do it on your own. Hence the reason why finding a community of
Hmm.
other multiple myeloma patients, caregivers, and survivors that can help you kind of weather that. Because, like I said, a lot of times you are navigating this outside of a medical professional supervision.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I just want to echo the comment that you said about being your own advocate and knowing your labs. And um, every blood cancer, we kind of talk about blood cancer as a whole, but it's not. There are so many different types. And depending on with any chronic disease, you might be seeing multiple specialists. So multiple myeloma, you might be seeing orthopedic surgeon, you might be seeing a kidney doctor, you're seeing an oncologist, probably seeing a primary care doctor. So and each of those physicians is going to really have a piece of the puzzle. And the primary care physician is like the quarterback. They're trying to make sure that you're getting to your oncologist when you need to, and all of those kind of some of the social aspects of it. Um, and sometimes those opinions and consultations are going to clash, right? The cardiologist might think differently from the nephrologist, and that's just how they think in practice. And so, but as the patient is the one who knows, well, these are the side effects that I'm willing to put up with. These are side effects I'm not willing to put up with. These are the ones that are just non-starters. And this is, so for me, when I see patients, it's patient's life. And they're the ones who have to let's help make the decisions together. And so, and I think, at least I hope medicine is moving away from the kind of the paternalistic, like you do what the doctor says, and more of a shared collaborative, decision-making process. And so, I echo that just because the doctors are the ones that might be prescribing the treatments doesn't mean that they have all the information that the patients have at their disposal, and they might not know what you value and what your goals are from treatment. So I
Mhm.
just wanted to echo that.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. For me, it was always about quality of life. I mean, like I said, I couldn't really walk, and had a
Mhm.
mobility issues, and so for me, walking was very important. So,
Yeah.
so yeah, I mean that was always the goal, and we stayed focused on that, with my team of 8 doctors, and truly blessed to have all of them in my life. Some of them have retired now, but the people that they've passed me along to, they truly understand that Greg is not your normal patient.
Yeah. Yeah. Good for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you so much for being on. Is there anything else you'd like to share?
No, no. Certainly, I think I've given you all the information for how people get in contact with me. I mean,
Yes.
there's a lot of information out there about me. Certainly, the easiest way is to just put in Gregory O. Proctor on Google, and boom, you get it all.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll share all of that in the show notes. So definitely.
Sure. Yep. Yep.
Yeah. Thank you so much. It's so wonderful to talk to you. And thanks for sharing your wisdom and your story with our listeners.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, and don't be a stranger.
I won't. Thanks. While I am a physician, the information presented in this podcast is for educational purposes only and should not be considered medical advice. It is not a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Please consult with your own healthcare provider before making any significant changes to your lifestyle or routine. By listening to this podcast, you are not creating a physician-patient relationship. Thank you for listening to the Purposeful MD podcast. If you like what you hear, please rate and review the show. Please also visit my website, www.thepurposefulmd.com, for free downloads or to discuss working with me as your coach.